So thanks for coming in, everybody. Got the other John joining us today. He's already here. He's already been dropping some pretty good knowledge before I started recording. So I can't even go back and look at it. I had to get up and top off my water, but hopefully we can fill in some of those gaps. So John, thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I don't know if my progress in my accounts warrants being interviewed, but I am grateful to be on, and I appreciate all you do every week.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you. I'd say posting a 22% change on the today rankings, I'd say that's pretty worthy of a look. So let's talk about it. John, where do you live?
So my wife and I live in Stamford, Connecticut. We've been here 3 years now, but prior to that, I lived 10 years or so in New York City, a year in Boston to go work at a startup. But I would say, John, that I prefer a view overlooking the beach in South Florida, so you're the smartest guy in the room.
Well, it's funny you say that. I don't look over the beach. I do live 4.5 miles from the beach, but almost everybody in Florida does. And from the stadium at my university, at the top row, you actually can see the ocean.
Wow.
Some of our dorm rooms, almost an entire side of the building does look at the ocean.
Wow.
So
That's
yeah,
cool.
it's pretty dope. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah. Today I had to ask Anson, who graciously gave me a backstop here. I said, I may lose power. I got a bad lightning storm. I don't know what to do. I got you, fam. So
nice. I'm ready for it.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So if I just drop out, basically Anson's in charge. That's the way this is gonna work. Well, he's in charge anyway, so like that's not really a shock. John, what do you do for a living? I
want to bump in there quick. We all know MJ is in charge, but go ahead.
Well,
true story.
Yeah.
So I'm a middle school math and science teacher. I just finished up my first year. Next year, I'm probably going to lean towards just teaching math rather than science, but I'm open to both. The bulk of my career was spent as an cotton options market maker. First independently, and then on a team of 3. I was in my mid-20s with a couple guys, veteran traders in their mid-40s, and they signed me on. I told my wife in terms of career, by the way, we have a baby boy on the way, so career.
Numerai coming on.
Yeah. So career priorities kind of shift, right?
Yes.
But I told my wife if Numerai went really well, I would consider going back to school because recently I've been hooked on Carlo Rovelli's exploration of quantum theory. And I just say, this is just incredible to my wife. And it's an avenue that really interests me. So, pending success financially and other avenues, I would consider going back to school.
Don't do it, John. I went back to school. Don't do it. Don't do it. And then all the other PhDs in the room are going to tell you, don't do it. Stay in industry. You can read the papers just the same way I can, and you can make money while you're reading. So that's my small aside. It's probably, you should do whatever makes you happy. That's my ultimate answer.
Yeah, that's a good policy.
But so you have varied interests. You're very high finance, which I'm very much a fan of, clearly. But how would your parents describe what you do for a living? Like, how do we explain it to the normal folks out there?
So, in terms of teaching, right?
Well, sure. Teaching is, we teach the kids, right? And then,
right.
What else do you do? How would your parents describe that part of your living?
I would say my parents. So I come from a family of public servants, teachers. My dad was a corrections officer. My brother works for the U.S. Post Office. Right. So now that I joined an at-risk school district as a teacher, right, there's a sense of pride. Right. It's not the same. They didn't have any. I don't want to say synergies, but there was no really connection to Wall Street. So, my sister used to make fun of me saying like, oh, go put on your Wall Street glasses and hang out with, the yuppies or, that.
I resemble that comment.
No, but, my parents are proud. And I have to say, I've never felt such an awesome responsibility as looking 25 at-risk kids in the face, knowing I need to prepare them for the future. In general, my parents and my wife kind of make me laugh because they say, for lack of a better word, you're unemployable because I have a distaste for rules and, institutions, which you can kind of gather from my childhood with the story I told. But at school, I really don't feel that way because I find it so crucial to be a role model to the kids that it just dissipates out of there.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so you're at I can't remember the coding. Is it a Title I school? Is that what that is?
I don't know if Connecticut refers to it as a Title I school. So it's a
I
it's a high
was trying to
percentage.
see if the titling was correct. My girlfriend works at a school like that. She's a third grade teacher.
Okay.
And most of them are English language learners. And so
yes, so in Connecticut we just call it ELL.
Yeah.
A high ELL population. Yes, the school I teach at.
Okay.
Very, very high ELL population.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So basically for those watching, it's English as a second language.
Right. And I intimately know what she talks about and the challenges that she faces. And so I can just kind of vouch for how important it is that what you're doing.
I appreciate that.
Incredibly important. So even more reason not to go back to school.
Yeah, I go back and forth about that. So I mean, that's a good point. And I appreciate that.
Yeah. What do you do for fun, John?
My wife and so living in the city for all those years, we love to go explore new food joints. Especially living in New York City and Boston. I like fishing. I like the beach. I like ping pong. And recently I've become addicted to audiobooks.
Really?
I kind of was resistant about jumping on the bandwagon, and now I can't get the earbuds out of my ears.
I don't know. I just can't listen to people talk. I need to see them talk. So it's always been a challenge for me to listen to that kind of stuff. But so I'd rather read it. And there's something about a physical book too. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm 36. I'm just on that edge of like, I grew up with the tech change. So my grandma had a rotary phone.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I know how to use a rotary phone, but anybody who's 2 or even 3 years younger than I am don't know how to use a rotary phone.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I'm your age, and I'm 36, and I remember going to my grandma's and doing the call mom, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
So wait a second. So if you're my age and Rudy's my Gemini twin, does that mean Rudy's also 36?
Slightly higher than that. I'm 40.
Close enough. In the same decade. So
same decade.
We're going to count it. So let's get on to Numerai. Thanks for letting us get to know you a bit. How did you find out about Numerai, and when did you start participating?
I think it popped up. I don't remember exactly. I think it popped up on like Medium or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or it was some online search related to hedge funds that trade crypto. Just, cool. I was just like sort of casting my line, trying to see what's out there, what's going on. Is there any new data science competitions and things like that?
Great. And around what time of year was that? I think I creeped your profile a little bit, but.
Oh, I'm sorry about that part.
No.
I think the first time I ever submitted something might have been round 168, or I think I just toyed around with the logistic regression with Numerox, like round 168, and then I did it again round 171. I iterated over a couple ideas, and then I took 5 rounds or something off. I just kind of put it to the side. But then as I started to look more and more into it and finally start to grasp the concept, that's when I said, wow, there is some pretty big upside here if I'm reading this correctly.
Yeah. What do you wish you had known when you started out?
Definitely the power of the example predictions, putting context with strategies that I was using. That goes for moving forward too, right? It's obvious that the variance of my strategy is pretty wild, right?
It's pretty high variance. I think we can talk about that a little bit if you like.
And it definitely has a lot more feature exposure than I'm comfortable with compared to my other strategies. And I apologize for not getting into the details.
This is the place where we talk about a lot, but really say nothing.
Yeah, yeah, that's finance.
Yeah.
But one of the mistakes I made, especially in the 190 round, somewhere in there, I think like 194, to 197, or somewhere in that range where I had a pretty bad drawdown, was overfitting using XG boost. So overfitting parameters with an XG boost led to really poor performance. And I realized, I need to take a step back. I need to look at more of the macro picture, hypothesis testing, rather than focusing on optimization right now.
Yeah. So that's pretty good, and I appreciate you telling us what you wish you had known. I get a lot of feedback. Like, many people believe that the tournament is so challenging that it's overwhelming, and it's too much to handle. Why do you think people believe that?
I think that for this tournament, you have to leave your ego at the door. Part of the reason why I made my username my name was free marketing, number one. I'm surprised more people don't do that, but also I want to be exposed. If my model sucks, let the world see. I have nothing to hide, right? If you fail, just get back up again, try it again, iterate over it. I'm fortunate to have played baseball my whole life where, failure is deemed successful, but, risk tolerance is relative. I think that's really what it comes down to, is risk tolerance.
I think I'm going to just interject just for 1 second, because that was really a golden nugget that I want to hold on to, because you just independently verified what I've been saying for like the past 4 months, is that risk is relative.
Yeah.
Right. That comes up a lot. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt,
No.
but I kind of had to tag that.
Not at all. And I appreciate you pointing that out, because it is.
Yeah.
And as I just mentioned, it's the most crucial component for mental health. I mean, if you compare, in my life, if you compare this tournament, even the variance I'm experiencing right now with rockorun, and I ported rockorun to John Scaife, but I'll get into the mentality in terms of stake strategy later on if we have time. If you compare the tournament to the stress and pressure of the trading pit when I was in there during the cotton squeezes in 2008 and 2011, this variance is a vacation. I mean, you want to talk about pure insanity. I mean, I have more than enough stories to tell for another time. But I mean, I always have a game plan and a stop loss in place. Lately, I've become obsessed about the problem, and I can see how people can become obsessed and go overboard. But I know I'm enjoying myself. And how do I know that? Every day when school was still in the brick and mortar classroom, every day I'd go pick up my wife, and when we get home, I would empty my pockets full of Post-its with ideas. And
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And it got to the point where she said, every time I would pick her up, how many Post-its today? Right? And so that's how I knew my mind is constantly thinking about this. I'm really enjoying myself.
This guy said, take lots of notes.
Wait.
No, that's great. So it's overwhelming and too much to handle, and you think people believe that because their risk tolerance is different?
I'm sorry, say it again one more time.
So the people think that the tournament's challenging and overwhelming, and the reason people believe that is because their risk tolerance is different than other people, perhaps?
Yeah, I'm sure risk tolerance has a part of it, but I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse. The noise of this data set is insane, right? So trying to find a signal or MMC, I say you have to think like a right angle. And how do you do that? I'm trying to figure it out too.
I don't believe you. Say that a little louder. What? It's a right angle, 22% change on the day. MMC what?
Yeah, but we don't talk about.
Oh yeah, right.
The 1300 NMR swing I had the previous 3 or 4 days, right? But
yeah,
as I mentioned in the chat, can you imagine if I tied a motion when I was trading cotton options? We're talking about an illiquid market with wide markets, and I'm holding hundreds of thousands of contracts, right? You can imagine the mark to market there, right? So it takes a lot to rattle me with that.
That's a good point, and that's something that I talk about in chat too with Sorios, and he's swinging houses around, and that personally I couldn't do that. Not where I am now as a PhD student, which is another reason why you should not go back to school. Don't do it. But yeah, he's swinging houses around. I couldn't tell my girlfriend, hey, I lost a house today. That's just me. Again, risk is relative. So yeah. I really appreciate that. I think it's important to have that discussion in front of other people so they can understand what I mean by that.
Yeah,
John,
exactly.
a little bit about your workflow. What programming language do you use and why do you use it?
So honestly, I almost messaged you and said, just remove this question because I really have nothing to add here. I'm a one-trick pony. I know Python. I mean, I might know a little bit C++, but I mean, it's no real great story other than I went online. Every site pointed to it as the go-to for data science. So lo and behold.
That's as good an answer as anybody else has given so far.
All right.
Except for Bohr. I have to pick on Bohr because he's my friend, so I can pick on him. But he prefers to use languages that nobody's heard of. And in fact, I think he invented the language, and that's why he uses it.
Sounds about right. I remember when he mentioned that, I was just like, what the heck is that?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
God love Boris. He's a great guy.
Yes.
What are your top 3 tips for the tournament, sir?
3 tips. 1, don't take tips from me. I'm still a newbie. You're the veteran. Take tips from John. With the N, no H.
Wait, but you are John.
No H.
There it is. There it is. Yeah, my parents couldn't afford the H.
So don't take tips from me. I mean,
Okay, that's 1.
What's up?
That's one.
Yeah. 2, focus more on, as I mentioned before, developing hypotheses and test them. Worry less about optimization. Very important. Keep a journal with your thoughts each week. I made the mistake of thinking I'll remember why I included a variable or something, only to realize, shit, I need to find out why again. It takes me a month to figure it out, and then I say, oh, why didn't I keep a diary? So recently, I'm almost filled here, but just keep a simple diary.
I dare you to show 1 page.
All right.
Oh, yes. This is excellent.
Chicken scratch. Let's see.
Now he's filtering. He's filtering.
This isn't very good, but you can see the chicken scratch. Can't really read it. I have a coffee stain.
Different color inks. Yeah, so you don't even carry the same pen around.
It's like how my mind works. All over the place.
You're definitely not ready to go back to school because you use different colored ink.
Yeah.
No way. Not happening.
Yeah.
I can't have you in a PhD program if you're switching pens around, trying to trigger me like that. Gosh.
I've got a couple of Moleskine notebooks just like yours.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Man,
nice.
if I showed you all my notebooks, you guys would just lose your mind.
Oh,
No, this one's just for Numerai.
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I got several
Oh,
notebooks.
look at you, John. Yeah.
I can't even, dude.
I guess we all think alike, huh?
I got a Bloomberg notebook. I got a red and black. Oh, you're a finance guy, so you know about red and black.
Oh, yeah.
This is like the Wall Street Standard, by the way. And then I don't know. I just buy notebooks and I just write stuff. But all my stuff is disorganized, just like you say. It's like my academic research ideas blend in with my Numerai ideas, and then I don't even look at my notes. So you know what? You probably shouldn't take my advice either.
Yeah. Okay. Take Bohr's advice. Let's just default to Bohr.
Bohr and this guy.
That guy.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, can we get all the notebooks? Show your notebooks again so I can get a screenshot for the write-up.
Don't do it, John. Don't fall for it.
You don't have to open it, but I'm forcing this.
Do you really want it?
I want it to happen.
Everybody shows notebooks.
Y'all are the best. Thank you.
No, now what he's doing, he's staging his write-ups. I think that's really smart. So we're all going to be memed. And so next time he requests something, you should definitely not do it. Yeah. Yeah. So that's how that goes. So
I owe you one more tip.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take it.
Last tip, and this kind of came out of nowhere, but I really started to think about this when I was kind of off the record bitching. And then Richard kind of directed me, or he directed me to say, focus on feature exposure, right? And when he said that, it really clicked. And I said to myself, I really need to focus on this right now and try to get my correlation with the meta model as low as possible. So my last tip, and this is what's been most beneficial to me, is kind of like what Richard said about what is the market inefficient with respect to? What about the data set is inefficient with respect to the market? That's how I think. So it's kind of like flipping it. But that's kind of where I have to leave it.
Well, you're up 22% today, and I'm down like 1.5%. So You're doing something right. Well, we'll see if it holds.
Yeah.
I gotta egg you on a little bit because your volatility is so high. You're doing okay today, but what's tomorrow gonna look like? I don't know, man. But you're targeting a different thing. Look, I'm going after stable top 100 performance. That's it. I don't care about MMC right now. You're doing something different and unique. See what I did there? And I think it's important. And you and I know, I'm trying to think, Keno knows, like all our finance bros, we know how important MMC is overall, like for the long-term strategic goal that we're all hoping for. So yeah, I applaud your efforts, sir, and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Here's a fun one. This is just a fun question. If you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
As a new teacher, my billboard would say, quality of education and wealth of zip code should have a 0 correlation. Otherwise, we might miss the next Einstein, kind of like what Richard said.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah.
And make sure you write that one down. I like that quote. That was good. So this is always controversial. And I don't mean to be controversial on your first appearance here, but who is your favorite team member?
Do I have to pick one?
You can only pick one. And yes, you do have to pick one.
Oh, man. I mean, I love everybody. I mean, I've had nothing but positive interactions with the Numerai team. I mean, from you, John, to Anson, to NJ, to Richard, to Jonathan. Everyone's just so approachable and friendly. And I think that's such an important characteristic of a startup. I mean, I don't know if I would call it a startup anymore, right? But approachability is so important because I feel like in the hedge fund space, we see a lack of that.
The black box.
So, what's up?
It's the black box.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't have a tally of who won each week or the total count, but
good.
I think I'll give my favorite one. I'll give Jonathan a shout out because he taught me a phrase called conspicuous consumption, which is basically calling out baby boomers for needing to keep up with the Joneses.
All right, Jonathan Sadego.
Talking about the diamond market. But,
De Beers makes a lot of money for little rocks.
I'm lucky that my wife is cool with Masonite because I would never buy one.
We need to chat after this. I need to talk to you about that.
Sure.
So there's another kind of like just general purpose question here. Do you have any tips for handling this social isolation period with grace?
I mean, it's the cliche, but stay busy learning and exercising. My wife and I take a 3 to 4 mile walk each day at our local park. I mentioned audiobooks. Somebody who really had me dumbfounded, which I don't know if this is just a recommendation in case any of you are interested, but have any of you ever heard of Dr. Jacques Vallée? No. So his research is really interesting, and he was recently in a documentary called Witness from Another World. I highly recommend checking it out. I'm kind of going off on a tangent right now, right, about handling the quarantine with grace, but I find that just diving into new topics is a really productive way to learn and engage yourself. Speaking along the lines of Dr. Jacques Vallée, I wanted to give a shout out to NASDAQ Jockey because I saw on his profile, I think it says he worked for the Department of Defense. So at some point, I would love to hear from him to see if he knows anything about like private sector projects related to, studying unknown phenomena.
Is he on? Sometimes he hops on.
Yeah, I actually want to look for him.
I don't see him in my list. He's a super friendly guy, so just hit him up.
Yeah, I think I will.
Yeah, no, I'd strongly encourage that. What's your number one feature request or improvement or complaint? That's a new one that's hopped in recently for the tournament. I
don't have a complaint. I still see more stability and upside in Numerai if external investment is allowed. Now, external investment is allowed with example predictions, right? Anyone can go just download the zip file and upload those example predictions. But I feel that if you open up to the masses, you will have another layer of data. It will be investor data, or I don't know if you refer to it as retail investor data, but I see more stability in Numerai, more upside in terms of income for participants. So external investment directly with the participants, or them capturing a percentage of those gains. I would like to see that. I do understand the argument for both sides.
Okay. So do you have 10 models now?
As of now, yes. My 10th model, it's spelled like this. And I have 4 staked accounts. I have now 6 other accounts that are just for testing. Big Joe is the last one. I think Big Joe is a better version, only slightly better version of rockorun, but I'm going to be testing because it is different.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just staked on all 10 of my accounts now, so I'm out of testing and into I'm doing it live, fam. So
Wow.
that started today. So we'll see.
Wow. Cool.
John, I would just encourage you to put a small amount on every one of them.
There you go.
I put 25 NMR at risk. I
Yeah.
took some out of my main account and moved it into those other test accounts. They seem to be doing okay.
Cool.
So I would just say, yeah, don't be afraid to test it in production. Especially if here's the basic idea that gives me a little confidence to say that, test it in production. If you have a main model that you're staking on, you're very unlikely to make such a tragic mistake that you burn every single week at 25%.
Yeah.
Right? Because you've proven to yourself that you know enough about the data not to make a tragic error. And so once you've crossed that threshold, then I think you have enough confidence in yourself that you can put a little skin in the game, if you will.
For sure.
I also think it holds you a little more accountable too, because I was screwing around on Arbitrage 4, and now that I'm staked on, I'm like, whoop, wait a second.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do
Yeah.
it. So
I don't want to interrupt you.
No, you're the special guest, my friend. You're the special guest.
So I was going to say, I'm finding similarities in this competition, or the way I'm approaching it, somewhat similar to the early Wild West days of online poker in the early 2000s, right? The only difference is MMC is 1 million times harder than it was figuring out how to exploit uneducated poker players back in that day, right? But my stake strategy is sort of similar right now in the Numerai tournament, because back in those days, in order to move up in stakes, right, you had to take calculated risk. So say I had a bankroll of $1,000 and I'm risking 5% of that bankroll every time I'm playing, whatever limits I was playing. There will come a time where if you're getting more confident in your game, or you want to try to maximize your reward, where you're going to have to take risks if you want to accelerate the growth, right? And so that was the approach I took in online poker in the early 2000s. And it's somewhat a similar approach that I'm doing now. I sort of cut off my risk for a little period of time as I was kind of grinding back from that drawdown. I reached a percentage above my original investment, right, in terms of Numerai, not total dollar amount. And I said to myself, okay, I reached this threshold. Now it's risk on again. If I get burned, it's risk off. We're going to grind again. We have to be X percentage above the high water mark, right, to be risk on again. And so that's kind of the process that, that I follow.
That's a very finance bro process. So I resemble that very, very much. And I agree. Here's another fun question for you. If you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you say?
Avoid partying so much in your 20s and learn a programming language sooner than later. I regret not learning a programming language sooner.
Likewise. Definitely. Yeah. I would also tell myself to long Bitcoin when it was like a penny.
Oh,
much as I could.
True? Is that really true?
I forget. I think it was down around there at some point. Very early days. I think I said this before, but I don't think Ant caught it in the summary, but I was mining on Slush Pool in 2013 with my then gaming computer at the time on old GPU just before the ASICs came out. And I had it calculated that if I just ran my GPU overnight, I could pay for my apartment's electric bill just by mining. I was like, this is fantastic. I can't game while I'm sleeping anyway. I'll just run it. Oh, thanks, Aunt. Yeah, he says he left that out to protect me. See, that's why you should never piss off the person writing your stuff. Definitely good. No, thanks for that. What advice would you give to someone who wants to become a data scientist?
I don't think I'm qualified to give that advice, but
yes, you are.
Nonetheless, I would say find an area of data science that interests you the most. Focus exclusively on it without disregarding the fundamentals. So I made the mistake of trying to learn Python to start on Quantopian. That was a very bad idea.
Me too.
Very bad idea.
Yeah,
right?
It was rough.
And so we both learned the hard way, right? What am I missing, right? I mean, you would never even deal with learning how to implement a class on Quantopian, right? So yeah, don't get bogged down by a million directions. Focus on what your passion is and, let it run.
No, that's great. And so before we finish out, this is just like a catch-all kind of question. If you could step into my shoes, what would you ask yourself that I didn't?
I probably would ask like a couple things. Number one, like, what's your happy place? And two, do you have any like crazy career stories or things like that?
So John, what's your happy place?
I knew this was coming. My happy place will make you smile, John. It's on Miami Beach or South Florida, listening to music or an audiobook, a new audiobook, right? I haven't been to South Florida since I had this audiobook addiction. Walking the beach in the early AM. That's my happy place.
Sunrise is a very, very special time in South Florida. Yes.
For sure.
Dawn patrol, baby. Get out there on a longboard and just ride.
Oh, yeah.
That's
awesome.
what I usid to do. I skipped a lot of high school to go surfing.
That's awesome.
My parents were like, it was a miracle you graduated high school. Don't do that again. Then I went to college and flunked out the first time because I was partying too much. So I closely resemble what you said earlier about don't party so much. That's life, right? Look where I am now. So I think I'm okay. You're doing well too, so it all works out. But
all right.
Absolutely. And then the other one you said was interesting career story.
Yeah.
Give us one.
I actually didn't prepare for this one.
I gave you this question. You walked in your own trap.
Yeah, I know. You know what? The craziest story, one of the craziest stories, I mean, I have a million of them from when I was in the pit, but one of the craziest ones was when I was a trading assistant. I worked for two traders. It was one to start, and then a guy who took time off came back. One was a dream, one was a complete sociopath, okay? And when cotton went nuts, and it was bedlam like I've never seen before, as a trading assistant, it was my job to keep track of his trades, let him know what his deltas were, all that stuff, sort of be his second pair of eyes. So he just was all over the place, out of control, just throwing trades left and right. It got to the point where his just book was so messed up that I literally could not reconcile his positions. So and during this chaotic time, people are very angry. They don't want to be bothered, right? As a young kid, I'm running around trying to get information. Did he make this trade? Long story short, he was so stressed out. I said, I think we're, long X amount of deltas and have these spreads on. So as a trading assistant, I'm doing this. And he's like, just do what you need to do to flatten me. So I'm saying to myself, as this 22 or 23-year-old kid, he wants me to go execute 400 futures and 500 spreads or whatever it was. I just like, what do I do? And then he started yelling, go do it, go do it. So I calculated his position and I executed it and ended up saving a ton of money, which he was grateful for. So that was a very unique and stressful experience as a young trading assistant.
When you told me that you were an open pit options trader, it made me think of a person in my cohort in the PhD program who traded options in Chicago, but was on the floor for 9/11.
Yeah.
And he said that, we had to open the market. So like, how do we set pricing? And he says, we just pressed the button and went live, and then we just raised the spreads. I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And he said it was surreal. And I'm sure he has significantly more stories to tell, but I'm going to ask you directly. Have you been in a fist fight over your floor trading partners?
So with each other or against other people?
Whichever.
Oh, so never, no, there's never any, my two former partners, they actually still trade cotton. Never always got along, like, great relationship. The pit, when things were crazy, it went from Jekyll to Hyde, right?
Yeah,
so I never got into a fist fight, but you can imagine you have to turn on the switch where you go from, smiling and high-fiving and handshaking to, just turning into a absolute nightmare. Like that's who succeeded, are the people who had no fear and weren't afraid to fight, because you literally are fighting over trades all day. You have a million brokers screaming out for quotes, and you are trying to literally listen in and focus, right? So you want to talk about a high-stress environment and capitalism at its purest. That's it.
No, I love open trading pits and the research around that. Tyler Shumway has a great journal article on that, where the weather affects pit trading. It's brilliant. John, thank you so much for coming on today and taking some of my questions. Really appreciate it. We're at time for questions, so I want to get to those, but if you'll stick around, maybe we can circle back and talk about some of your models if you want to talk about that, because we had mentioned the 22% swing today and you wanted to speak to that point. Let me just pull up the questions, fam. Let me just scan chat, see if there's any questions. Oh, did you see Sly Fox's question on what books are you reading and listening to?
I did not, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So I'll type those in right now. Actually, let me pull up the links.
Cool.
I got you, Sly Fox.
Got you, fam. So Anonymous has a question. How do I stop my models being MMC toxic? MMC toxic. I'm not sure I understand that. So maybe John Scaife can answer this question. What does MMC toxicity sound like to you?
MMC toxicity.
How do you stop your model from being MMC toxic?
I can't confirm that my model isn't MMC toxic.
I think it just means negative MMC, like making the meta model worse. Yeah.
Or it could be an extension of that question last week on how can I have worse or negative correlation with positive MMC, aren't I making the meta model worse?
Get good.
I mean,
yeah, I think that's the right answer. Like submit really unique predictions, and you will have a non-MMC toxic model.
How well do you think our models would do in a hypothetical late summer market downturn and bear market thereafter? Are we neutral enough? Haven't we had summer burns and it didn't run for too long?
Like maybe this one is for like Richard if he's listening. It's more like how it would be meaningful if he tells us like, okay, like the sentiment in the street, like some part of the street. And I posted like a link to an interview with a guy called Luke Ellis. And so he's the founder and CEO of a thing called the Man Group. And the Man Group is the biggest hedge fund that is publicly traded. They have about 104 billion assets under management. And so the question was like, okay, what do you think the market is going to be doing? Because everybody asks him the same thing. And so nobody has a crystal ball, but like a possibility and a probability is that by late summer, like maybe end of the year, the impact and the devastation of the COVID things and the metrics and like the GDP and like, the unemployment will bring down the market and like turn it into a bear market. So again, like, it's like, it could not happen, but my question is like, how well, like, so if Numerai is happy with how we have performed in the past, or should we change something dramatically for the next, if the bear market actually happens? So I don't know if that's something they want to get into.
Well, I think part of your question are we neutral enough in the sense that the training data has been neutralized against that possibility? Hopefully, right? Because vol would be a sell-off.
Yeah.
Right. So if we're neutral to volatility, then we should be indifferent if we enter a bear market. We just want things to move, right? Because if we have a neutral market, that's really difficult. Nobody makes money in a neutral market.
But we don't lose as well. So, you know, like not losing on a bear market is almost like winning in some way, in some sense.
If you're long only, right? But a long short, it doesn't matter. You just need it to move, whether it's up or down, just not sideways.
Right.
So I don't know. I also don't think he'll tell us because, you know, secret sauce and stuff. I'm curious to see, Keno, I want to see a series of burns. I really do, because I haven't had a good stress test of my models in some time. That seems counterintuitive, but if you look at my staking history, you'll see that I'm drawing down like every chance I get. I'm trying to keep my risk at a threshold because I have no idea how I'm going to do in a burn. I don't want my downside variance to be greater than my upside variance, because that would be really bad. And so I'm taking risk off while other people are increasing their exposures. That's why I'm doing it, because we haven't had a burn. And my history with the tournament says we will burn. It's just a matter of time. And this sequence of earning is historic. We've never had a run like this. And all things go up must come down. That's like this guy would know. Isn't that some like law of some hard science thing that I didn't study very much in high school? Okay, so he gives me a thumbs up. So that means I was on to something right there. So yeah, I get Keno. I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see. But yeah, sell in May and go away. But here we are in June. Maybe it's sell in June and go away. Go away and come to South Florida and play golf with me.
Sure. Come down to Mexico, have some tacos.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Excellent. And then you had a signals question.
Yeah, I don't know if Jason is out there, but like basically it's I mean, I'm starting to submit there, and like I don't know what's the time horizon or like drawdown or like turnover that they want. So basically, you know, how often should we submit? Because again, one of the other things from that interview with a guy from the hedge fund is like they asked him, okay, so who's gonna survive in a year time? And so the question is, whichever companies have like a strong balance sheet, right?
Generally speaking, sure. Mm-hmm.
So that gave me the idea. It's like, well, maybe I should like make like a model for both Quantopian and signals of companies that have like a strong balance sheet, right? So, but then that gives you that started me thinking, okay, but then again, like signals as it is right now is set up for more like sort of like weekly day trading, and so that's why the question is like, okay, so you know we have like our submissions gets scored for like 60 days, I think, and but I don't know how you would make like a longer like portfolio of things, or like what kind of like sharp are they gonna reward. And so if Jason is out there, like they know, that would be great.
Yeah, the answer
Speaking
is
of Jason.
Yeah, sorry, I'm camera off today.
Oh, you won't show us your hair?
Camera
God, it's so bad. It's
it's not bad, dude. Come on.
It's getting worse and worse. Look at this.
Yes, thank you, Jason. Here, I'll mess my hair up and fit in with you.
But yeah, the answer is right now, don't worry about turnover. We'll let you know. I mean, we have to report it to you if it's going to become something you're scored on or something that affects your payouts. We'll have to put it as a scoring metric, which it currently just isn't. So in the short term, it's not going to matter. It almost certainly will matter in the long term of signals, but I wouldn't worry about it right now.
All right, cool.
Cool. Thanks, Jason. Thanks for showing your hair.
Yeah, no problem.
Wouldn't you prefer to rebalance daily, because then you could react to like what the market is doing as well?
It's almost certain that once we start, we're not trading signals yet. So, but once we start trading signals, it would be traded daily. Yes, I would imagine so.
What are some suggested ways to explore and develop decent MMC models? I'm going to let John pipe in if he chooses to. Oh, you're muted, bro.
Sorry, can you just repeat the question one more time?
No problem, no problem. What are some suggested ways to explore and develop decent MMC models?
So,
you don't have to answer that. I was just saying you could if you like.
No, I think I can give a little bit of insight as to the approach I took. So when talking about the data set, what I thought about was if we're looking at quintiles, right? are those quintiles representative of numerical edges? Meaning, if I'm looking at the fourth or fifth quintile, so 0.75 or 1, right? Let's just use 0.75, like somewhere in that range, right? So I ask myself, okay, if I put a basket of numerical data within that quintile, what does it really look like? How do I exploit the actual numerical edges? So for example, if something is in the 81st percentile versus the 99th percentile, right? Those are bucketed into the same quintile. Is there a way for me to exploit the actual numerical edges? And what I mean by that is the stock that is in the 81st percentile momentum and the stock that's in the 99th percentile really mean reverting, but I'm putting them into the same category. That's kind of how I thought about it. So within each quintile, there are numerical edges that exist that I think are exploitable, but I don't know for sure.
I'm going to look like I'm thinking really hard and like that I know exactly what you're talking about. And I'm going to, yeah,
It's almost like if you
man,
think like
I'm going to do that later today. Nope. But cool, man. Like, I appreciate you taking the question because I couldn't answer it. I don't have any ways to exploit MMC. I don't know.
It's hard for me to talk about it without, exposing secret sauce. So I apologize for that.
And nor would I ever ask you to. So anything that you say is voluntary, and we greatly appreciate your insight, regardless, even if it's vague and opaque, just as long as it isn't false and misleading. Because then I will turn the pitchforks against you, sir.
Definitely not that, John. Thanks.
Cool. Great. Can one measure potential MMC before going live? If not, how many live rounds is needed to evaluate an MMC model? So this one, I think I can try to answer because MMC is relative to the meta model, but we have some proxies for it, right? The example predictions, I think they're 95% correlated with the meta model almost all the time. And so you're really close already. I would say that start there. That's a great working place to go from. And then maybe go orthogonal to a different modeling type, right? Because that's XGBoost, so you can go orthogonal to that and come up with something that gives you positive correlation that should also give you MMC because you're different. So if you're 95% of the way there, that's a lot. Like, there's not much left for you to be wrong on. So I'd say start there. Is the MMC payout incentive appropriate and high enough? I'd say with the leverage that it is, it's just that it works both ways, up and down. So I thought about this, and I don't know. I'm just floating it out there. This is a trial balloon, right? We're gonna see how high it gets. What if the leverage was on the upside, but there was no leverage on the downside? Trial balloon. I'm not suggesting anything more than that. NJ has a question for you, John. Besides the Disney World, e.g., any other fun childhood applications of game theory you can share with us that help frame the way you see the world?
Oh, I appreciate that question. So, I mean, I have a lot of stories. What can I disclose as a public school teacher? I did the same thing to Disney World when I was 16. I had a girlfriend who was on cheerleading team. She had to go to some like competition. And I remember going with one of my best friends. We were 16 in Florida. We didn't have any money, maybe a couple $100 to our names from working. And I said to him, I was like, "You want to get into Disney World for free?" And he said, I don't believe you can do it. And I said, "All right, we'll watch." And so I got us into Disney World for free with him. So that was one application that I used. But the first application I used after seeing my father do that was actually my uncle owned a baseball card store. And there was this mania for this one baseball card. It was called the Mickey Mantle Refractor. I don't remember what year it was, or, I probably was 10 years old or 11 years old. And there was this crazy surge of demand where everyone was really paying these absurd prices for the Mickey Mantle card. So one day I'm in my uncle's store and I look at it and I say, "This card looks thicker than the other cards." I said, why don't we take out all the packs and compress the wrapper to see the width of the packs? Lo and behold, it worked. So I was going through hundreds of packs with my uncle.
Yeah, just use a caliper.
Yeah. Until we developed some device for it. Yeah, exactly. And until my father came, it was just like, you got better things to do. Get the hell out of here.
Gee, thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
I guess, is that game theory though, or just entrepreneurial?
Good question.
Yeah, so that specific, I'll tell you, game theory is the hardest class I took in my life, and I shudder a bit when I see game theory and I have to talk about it. So I'm just going to go right to the next question. What is the cutoff time in Pacific? It says PTI, I assume that's Pacific time, for increasing or decreasing stake. Actually, I want to know too, because of reasons. Either Mike or Michael Oliver or Anson or Jason. What is the actual time that we cannot make any more changes?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'm hoping
I also don't know. So right now, I don't believe. Okay, Jason can correct me if I'm wrong, since I think Jason is the closest to the truth here. We have a scheduled job that syncs all of the changes, but we don't have like a hard deadline where you have to make changes by.
That's incorrect.
Oh,
okay. The hard deadline is Thursday at 10 a.m. or Thursday at round open time is the hard cutoff.
In Pacific time.
Okay.
PT.
But the job can run before then, so it's like it's a little bit weird. So so you're right. To a certain extent, there is not a hard cutoff.
Yeah.
Mm.
I do want to talk a little bit about time zones, though. Like, for those of you guys who have been here for a long time, we've had a lot of different time zone issues, with daylight savings and all that stuff. So we don't do Pacific time anymore. Everything's in UTC. So it's better for like an international community. So no answer for PST. Everything's in UTC.
But we want to know the specific time when we should stop fiddling with our changes. Whether that's PT, UTC, or whatever. How about this? I will allow some research to be done, because it sounds like it's a little bit vague, maybe, but maybe we can put it in the docs.
Yeah. We'll put it in the
request, a hard time for fiddling with our stuff.
We'll put it in the docs, and then I think we should also just put it in the staking modal itself so it's clear. Yeah. Good feedback.
Is it just me, or some people underestimated the difficulty of achieving a good MMC? It ain't just you, pal. I think everybody's underestimated it. I just stayed away from it because I wanted to see what would happen. I was letting other people figure it out and beta test it. Yeah, it's really hard. Sorios flipped from MMC back to core. John, have you flipped back and forth? Or have you stuck with it? Or I forget you're muted. Oh, there you go.
No, so I have not flipped yet. I decided to turn risk on with MMC starting in round, I think 214. I don't have my screen up. But no, I haven't flipped yet. I hope not to, but
yeah.
I mean, you have to take risk into consideration too. So I have it, I guess, the hard stops in place.
Yeah. So yeah, it's difficult. I'm hoping in the fireside chat we can maybe really go into the weeds a bit on it and discuss it some more. And I'll kind of just let it go there. Except the next question is about MMC. So why is MMC somewhat volatile? Or is it that once you go over a certain MMC threshold, is it no longer volatile, like the ones at the top? I don't know. Let's ask Mr. MMC Mike P. Why is MMC somewhat volatile?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends. Like, if you imagine you have a model that's pretty like similar to integration tests, for example, like what's remaining, like when you become orthogonal to integration test, what you're left with is like basically some kind of like random noise. So your MMC is going to be volatile if it's if it isn't giving like a meaningful good signal that is independent of the meta model. So yeah, I mean, if you make one that's if you make one that is completely orthogonal to the meta model, then you should expect it to be as volatile as you see in your own like out of sample test, really. Yeah.
I noticed some people are getting correlation of the meta model close to 0, and that I'm really curious how they were able to target that. So that's something that I'm very curious about, and then how volatile they will be. So thanks for talking about that. Does attention in neural nets have a place in the Numerai data set? I'm just going to mute myself now.
Okay, I think I could probably talk about it. You could try using multi-headed attention, which has been very successful in NLP. But attention mechanisms are extremely data hungry. And we probably need a lot more training data to be able to properly train a attention-based model.
Do you? What's the difference in between attention and like a loss function?
So essentially, the way attention works is so if you have an MLP, you have an attention mechanism which essentially takes 3 inputs. So essentially 3 linear projections. It's called K, Q, and V. Essentially key, value, and question. And then essentially it tries to weight the outputs from your MLP with a softmax on these linear projections. So essentially it's the neural net equivalent of having eval in a programming language, right? So your neural net can dynamically gate itself at runtime. So that makes it very powerful. It's just that it's really, it takes a lot of data to train it.
Mike did have a question. JRB, do you think our time series structure even allows for this attention idea without having consistent rows from era to era? Yeah, that sounds like a panel data kind of thing, right? Where if we could tag the equity through the time series, yeah, I would do all kinds of time series stuff, but I think people would just overfit.
Well, I think if you essentially bolt on a multi-headed attention onto, say, a simple neural network, it's essentially dynamically routing, the thing. So essentially, one way to look at it is you are making your model dynamic. So I think it would work in theory, but yeah, need a lot more data though.
A lot more data. I agree.
Why is it that the training data is monthly and the test data is weekly? Is that just because of the sort of structure of the overlapping rounds, or is there some deeper reason? And if you can say anything about how you actually implement the overlapping rounds in practice, that would be interesting too. Like, what is there an overlap between the predictions we're submitting for round 215 and 216 in terms of the assets you guys are trading, and sort of how do you unravel that and blend them, or do you just take the newest ones? Whatever you can say, I mean, just talk around that would be interesting.
Actually, we haven't talked about that in a very long time. I'd love to hear the team say what they can, if they can.
Mike, maybe?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I was looking at the chat.
So the way the test data is weekly, but our training data is monthly. So in my 2 cents, I'm going to kind of fill in the gaps. And if I'm wrong, just tell me, right? It's cool. But we have weekly predictions, but it's monthly predictions. And so are we overlapping? And to what extent does that affect us? How can we mitigate it? And can you talk about the process at the hedge fund level if you can?
Okay, yeah, well, I mean, the reason that they're in training data, they're not overlapping, is so that you don't have to worry about the overlapping problem. But the reason we do have them overlapping in the test set and in real life is because we do want to reevaluate our positions like every week and update to whatever we think the latest best portfolio is. So we basically handle the overlapping and how to deal with that, and let you guys just train models and not have to worry about kind of the challenges that come with that.
I look forward to hearing from Quantverse next week, and I look forward to seeing everybody else in Rocket Chat. Bye, fam.